On this DIY, we're showing you how to build a toddler helper stand. Now what this is a simple stand with a high tall framework around the top, which allows your little son or daughter to climb in up to the top without falling over, and it brings them up to your level, in other words, your working space. So now they're actually part of your life and whatever you're actually doing in the kitchen or the workshop. So we're going to show you exactly how to do it step by step. With this DIY, I've tried to keep it simple by using one type of timber, one size, 22 by 69 plain all round timber. And obviously I've just cut it to all different lengths. I haven't done it. I've got the guys at Builders to cut it all to size for me, so that all that's left is the assembly part, which is the fun part. Let me show you what tools that I'm going to be using for this DIY. So I've got a whole range of tools over here, and you don't need them all. We'll pick that up throughout the DIY. We're starting off with a good old favorite, being a cordless drill. I've got my best tool in the world, which is a Kreg pocket tool maker. And I've got some quick clamps, got some Kreg screws, we've got some wood fill if we need it, we've got some wood sealer, we've got wood glue, we've got some gel stain, we've got a paintbrush, a sponge and some gloves, and I've got an orbital sander, and I've got a router as well. You may not need the router, but I just want to put that finishing touch onto mine. What I like to do with my timber is actually place it all out into position and actually kind of build the framework how I've set it up. Then that way you can just mark all the positions where the pocket holes need to be. You can also mark up every member so you don't kind of lose the plot along the way. There's my two sides. I've kind of built the structure. Now I'm just going to mark up exactly where I want to put my pocket holes. Remember, this is just an indicator of where I need to be putting my pocket holes roughly. I don't have to measure it out. When I put it onto the tool, I'm going to put it into the exact place where I want it. And we also are going to fill these holes up afterwards. This is the Kreg tool, which I'm going to use to make my pocket holes, and what I like about pocket holes is they're concealed and it's a strong joint. As you can see, it does make quite a bit of mess. With the Kreg tool, it has got a fitting which allows your vacuum to connect to the back, and keeps things a lot cleaner. There's all the pocket holes for my framework. Now for my steps and my back pieces, I'm also going to have pocket holes too. 2 in every piece on every side. 2 there and 2 there. All my pieces are now prepared. I've got all the steps, all the pocket holes in the steps in the back and sides. And now we can start assembling our structure. Now to keep my hands as free as possible, I like to secure the timber to my bench. Line that up square. And I'll make use of these Automax clamps. What these do, these actually adjust to whatever size you're working with automatically. So it makes your life so much easier when doing a DIY. That's secure. Put in my screws. I'm happy with that. All my screws are in position. We've got a little bit of a production line going. What I am going to do is just put a little bit of wood glue between the mating surfaces just to add it along. You don't always need it with the Kreg tool, but I like to be extra safe. Now as you screw these two together, it's designed that the screws actually pull the two pieces of timber together to make that strong joint. And because I've got everything cut square, I know that everything's going to be neat and square. Now you'll see I'm not using a tape measure too much. What I like to do is actually use my existing pieces to make sure I've got everything to the right height. So this is the bottom leg that is going to be holding this bottom brace, and I know it's going to have to be the same size here, so I'll use that as a spacer instead of actually measuring it. That way I know it's exactly right. Now that's the height of my first step. I want the second step to be the exact same distance. So I'm going to use the same spacer as my marker, and that's where my next piece is going to go in. That's that one side finished. What I'm going to do now is I want to plug all of these pocket holes as well. So I'm going to make use of the pocket hole plugs, and I've chosen a pine look to obviously match the rest of my timber, but you can use a different material to get that contrasting effect as well. Very easy to put in. Basically fill the hole with some glue and then squeeze that plug in, and we're going to allow it to dry. Very straightforward. All you have to do now is put that aside to dry and then repeat the exact same procedure for the other side. Right, let's get that down into position. I'm going to clamp it down on my table and pull out my sander, and away we go. I'm happy with that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make use of my router and take it all the way around the edges to give that rounded edge. You don't have to do that. You can just sand it off with some sandpaper just to get rid of those sharp corners if you wanted to. When using a router, you've got to be careful and you've got to make sure that you run from left to right when your timber is on this side of the blade, and obviously right to left when timber's on the other side. So you're starting on. Always double check your cutter. You want to be cutting into the timber and not allowing your cutter to roll along the top of the timber. Now that you've routed all the edges, I'm going to do exactly the same for the back pieces and the steps. Basically all the way around on both the leading edges, but I'm not going to do the bit where it joins onto the timber, just on the outer edges like so. So let's move those out the way. Let's go open these clamps up. And what we are going to do now is we're going to start assembling our structure, and let's get some shape to this stand. That's our framework. We've got some structure to it now. What I'm going to do next is put in the steps in between here and here. It's actually easier to work upside down for this particular one. So we'll flip that up, and I'm going to put in a couple of pieces of timber just to clamp them in place to hold my steps so I've got them flush with those two surfaces. Take off the clamps. And there we have it. There's our finished structure. All that we have to do now is the fine tuning. I've got to fill in these pocket holes like I did earlier, exactly the same. Let them dry and sand them down, and then I'm going to stain it. Now that it's sanded smooth, we've removed all the sharp edges and burrs. I'm going to stain it using a Woodock gel stain. I'm going to use a bright blue, quite a nice funky color. And what's nice about it is it still keeps the grain texture look coming through. I'm then going to seal it with at least 2 coats of Woodock floor sealer. The reason why I'm using a floor sealer is because it's going to have a lot of traffic on these steps and wear and tear. That's the DIY complete. If you enjoyed it, like it, share it. You can subscribe to our channel as well. Now, the proof is in the pudding. We need to put this to the test. So let's get this home. Remember, everything that you've seen here is available at your local builder's outlet.